Good morning. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Can we take turns? Well, I'm still sort of rolling. It's part of the leftovers. As most of you know, last week I was on a cruise with Chris Chanowith and a pretty big group. See, have I got my mic on? Oh, okay, good. But it was really, really good. I enjoyed every moment of it. You know, there are more than one speaker. So I was speaking last Sunday morning along with a couple of other people. And then we listened to Chris. He usually does an introduction, and has a message in the beginning. And so the whole thing just really, really worked out well. The one thing I thought about when I got to church this morning and saw Ken in here with the rest of you, we didn't have any music. Melinda usually is along, or has been for several times before, but wasn't there this time, and she's the one that sort of does the music. But it was really good, and I felt like that I gained something from every speaker, that there was something particularly for me. Of course, when I go to hear somebody, I'm looking for that because I'm saying there's going to be something in there, maybe all of it, maybe part of it, but always something that's there for me, and it certainly was this time. Very unusual trip. When I say that, that is an ordinary thing to happen to me, but still, I felt like the cruise itself was wonderful. But guess what? I missed you guys Sunday. When I walked in today, it's just, what can I say, choir, and it felt like that y'all prepared that all for me when I got back, right? You weren't thinking about another single thing, right? Okay. Well, scientists, I like to bring you scientific reports every once in a while. And during the last presidential campaigns, scientists were really at work. It seems as though during the third debate, scientists had a whole cage full of mice that they put in front of the TV. And for some reason, at the end of it, 35% of them had brain damage. 15% just went totally insane, and would you know that 3 went out and hung themselves? So much for politics. I wanted to talk about the strange law of reciprocity. Does it seem that strange to you? No, it seems pretty ordinary. All the heads are shaking no. Some little parts of it to me, it's not that it's strange, it's just that I've gone through this period of discovering, because one of the things that I made up my mind that I was going to pursue, that take a spiritual pathway and take it so seriously, and that doesn't mean that it's any, it's not in order to be holy, it's to make life work to its absolute fullest. That's what sometimes we don't get from what we're taught in fundamentalism, which, I have to say I can't be critical of that because whenever that was what I had, that was what I needed. Do you see? And then when I needed something else showed up. And I think that's the way it is in life. If we have the desire within us to know God and to experience God, this is what begins to happen. If we have that desire, it begins to be fulfilled. And everything we needed to know was already there in our knowing. And that's just like I'm well aware that there is an absolute knowing within every one of you, and that nothing I can bring would be more than just a reminder to draw that out, which is already there. So it's not like giving you new information. But anyway, here's what the scripture says. This is a really, I think, the right one for this. Whatever a person plants, he will harvest. Now, I like that. That's Galatians 6:7 in the new book, The Method. It's, I think in the King James, it's like, whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap. In other words, whatever you put in the ground and plant, that's what comes up. And this is just like a law of reciprocity. It's like of giving and receiving. Keep some things in mind. I'm just going to, touch some things that give you examples of it. But for example now, if we extend or exert energy, we get back strength ordinarily. That's sort of like, it's really the same thing, isn't it? We put out energy, get back strength. I don't know whether there's anything that violates that or not, but I know that when you're on a ship like we were, that about the length of 3 football fields, that to get to anywhere, you walk an awfully long ways. And so my legs should be really, really strong. I should have lots of strength because we put out lots of energy just walking. I mean, if that wasn't enough, it should be good for my heart. Although the thing I can't understand after putting out all of that exertion and energy, it seems like my clothes shrunk. I don't know. But the meals, they just keep serving you food. Food is there everywhere all the time. And it really is hard to resist. But think about this now, extending energy and getting back strength. Okay, let's think about another thing here. Send out blessings and you get back blessedness. And I think to some extent, if we make it that personal choice to, as you go through life and as you walk around, as you are in traffic, whatever situation you're in, if you develop the habit of sending out blessings, I think there is a sense of bliss that comes with that. I think it sort of like changes the way we feel inside, because what we're doing, we're sending out blessings, but then we are getting back a blessedness. Another thing, and this is one of those things that it may just be from me, it may not really apply to anybody else, but it certainly has become, in the last 10 years, a factor in my life. But handle time and life itself softly. And time and life will handle you softly. Now, it's hard to explain exactly what this means, but I know that time and space really in spirit do not exist, do they? We made that up ourselves just so we would keep from being late, I guess. I can't think of any other reason. But this is a man-made factor, is time. But when we think about time and we think of the things of God, then there is no real time. I read this book, about time. Let's see, A Short History of Time. And do you know who Stephen Hawking is? Oh, yeah. Yeah, everybody knows that. Well, I came out sort of baffled. When I'm reading his work, I can't say that I get that much information, but I certainly get dizzy. But anyway, it's as though he was off and on about deciding whether it existed or not, but it wasn't clear to me at the end just exactly what he thought about it, because like I said, the way he described it and the word he used. But think about time. Okay, Life itself, then, isn't in a hurry unless you are in a hurry. Now, I remember Deepak Chopra was on the Oprah show, and she said, do you realize how hard you are to get on a show? And said, I've been trying, and she said how many years she had been trying to get him on. Said, you are really busy. And he said, he said, my body is busy, but I'm not. And I thought, do you know, that really sort of tinkled a bell somewhere in my head, because I realized what that means. And what I have over the last few years started trying to do, and when I'm driving along, especially when I'm by myself, I don't try to talk to myself when somebody's with me, but I talk to myself, it seems like. Now I'm really, because I'm aware of the presence of God, so I'm going around. And I will say, and I will be speeding along, or not speeding like that, but for me, for an 82-year-old man speeding, which that may be going 60, you never know. I won't say. But still, I'm going along, and there's a little tension there that's sort of left over from years past, to where that was the habit you got into. And then here is the phrase that I say, Glenn, you've got plenty of time. There's no need to hurry. That's the very sentence, and I do that. I may do it in a trip to Dallas. I may do it 3 or 4 times. I mean, there's no telling, because I'm constantly trying to do this thing about taking care of time, not to hurry it. I think that's why that bodies potentially can live longer, or at least feel better while they are living, if we do away with a little bit of the stress that is just sort of, it seems natural if you've ever been in business. I remember changing from minister of a church, and my very first job was a construction superintendent. I want to tell you, that's not always a stress-free job. And a lot of the times, no matter what you try to do to get along with everybody, there's usually someone mad at you about something. I mean, you can just about tell when the day starts, there's that probability that somebody's going to be upset about something, whether it's your fault or not. But if you're the superintendent on the job, well, you are the one that gets the word, if you see what I'm saying. And it goes to all extremes. I remember one day building the Civic Center in Denton, and there was a big compression ring around, and so it got rolled out wrong by the steel company that furnished it, and so I had to lay off a bunch of people. Well, there was one man in particular that was sort of, I can't use the expression, but it has to do with kissing, that because I had made him foreman, he felt like that. So anyway, when we had this layoff, well, he said something to me. He said, have I got a check there? And it happened to be his was on top. And I said, yes. Well, do you believe this? But he came back in a couple of days with a gun and was going to shoot me. And I have a couple of old carpenters that caught him and saw what was happening and talked him out of it. And I sat in the office, and I didn't go out and confront him. I didn't really know what to do in a situation like that. But I know what stress is. I know what stress is. And I've lived with stress. And now I have said, that is really not necessary to my life. Do you see the difference? You can do something and it just seems like that's what life is supposed to be, because we're in a hurry. We need to get something done. This needs to happen. That needs to happen. And usually when we get in that state of mind, then there are people calling, confirming that, confirming that you need to be in a hurry because have you taken care of them? Have you taken care of this? Have you taken care of the other? Anyway, it goes on. And so what really that I think is developing, and the idea developing in what we're sending out, and what we're getting back is this. We're sending out patience. You don't think about it seems so passive when you say that about patience, but really it is a creative force. When you are experiencing patience with your own life, with the lives of others, this really begins to change things that are happening in your life, because it has that magnetic effect that draws things to you, and it changes, really, it begins to change not only what's happening, but the way you see what's happening. Do you realize that just how you see the world, how you see your day, is probably more important than actually what happened? The event itself is nothing. It's how we react to it. And if we begin to have patience, not only with ourselves, but with everybody around us, with everybody, whether it's drivers out on the road, I have learned to just sort of back off and leave everybody a little room. If somebody needs to cut in, let them cut in, whatever. Even if they're rude about it and cut in, I say, God bless you. You know, you needed this space real bad, because I realize they're going through something that I'm not. So I don't have to join them in this stressful moment, do I? I can just back off and just stay out of everybody's way. I think it's the most marvelous way to live, because I've tried both ways. I've been on both sides of this thing. And then another part of that same idea is to live rather lightly. This is, I think it also has to do with how you see things, because there's so much tragedy about us, but yet there's so much good going on also. And a lot depends on how we begin to focus our attention. I don't know why it is, but in the news, do you notice that it's the bad events that they like to talk about the most? And sometimes it just seems like nearly accidentally good things get worked into it. But the idea being that there are good things happening, and there are good things happening in our life, every one of us, and then something will come along that will seem to contradict it. And I always feel like that it's Spirit trying to get my attention of how important it is, that relationship of knowing that Spirit has my back, that Spirit is there, interested in every little thought that I have, interested in every little thing I do. Whatever might feel like goes wrong isn't necessarily going wrong. I'm totally embarrassed to give you a football illustration because I know most of you really aren't interested in it, but I'm going to give it to you anyway. You know, it was sort of real tragic last year about the Cowboys. They only won 4 games out of 16. They were 4-12. But what did that do? That gave them the 4th pick in the draft, and 2 quarterbacks went, but our 4th pick, we took the best running back that I've ever heard of. His name is Ezekiel. It's like the prophet has finally. They say in the locker room, all the players now are studying the book of Ezekiel. But anyway, he's a runner. But the point is that sometimes something really tough and bad leads into something good and great if we are taking life with a patience, and we are looking at life softly, and we are treating life with a sort of lightness. When I listen to, and this has happened several times, of the Dalai Lama being interviewed, and he's in the United States, and we're interviewing him and everything, it just seems like he laughs so much. And there's so many things to him that are funny and everything. And you wouldn't think that somebody that's been exiled from their country and will be arrested and jailed if he ever goes back, he can't even really enjoy his own country, because Tibet now belongs to China. And they don't believe in whatever he believes in, and they'd like to punish him because, you know, there are people that like for you to believe exactly as they do, or something's wrong with you. Well, anyway, I began to notice that in him, that there's a lot funny, and you know that it may seem like sort of like, aren't you taking life seriously? But I think if we lighten up a little bit, that we began to see that not all life really needs to be that serious, that we can pray, but I think it's better to pray from lightness or happiness and joyousness than it is from grief. I think we pray when we're hurt and we've got all these things, but if we lift ourselves up and pray from that lightness, I think that it's better. I think that it's better. Okay, that's giving patience in and getting back delight. Let's look at another thing. When we give generously, what happens? You're right. You're right. You've read that scripture too. That's what Jesus said. He said, what?
100-fold.
100-fold. That was right. Also, it said, and packed down and running over. That if you give generously, this is the law of reciprocity. It really, in a sense, wouldn't make any sense if it were not for that spiritual law. That what you give in, and even if it's like money is, of course, that's why we tithe. That's why we give to the church. Not because the church needs us, but we need the experience of knowing that God has not run out of money. God is not, it sometimes appears that maybe we have, but as long as we know that God is our source and we keep practicing from that source, then there is always that blessedness. Now, speaking of the lightness, a while ago, I meant to mention to you that we had one of our speakers that his talk was about laughing. And so he started us out. See, I missed that out of one point, so I'm reversing, I'm backing the car up a little bit. If I hadn't mentioned it, you wouldn't have even noticed it, would you? Anyway, so he started out by telling 3 jokes. And they were all funny. I'm going to tell you one day. I'm going to do them one at a time, see, because I enjoyed him. But the fact is that when I saw him up there, I said, do you know that confirms what I have been feeling and experiencing the last number of years, how to lighten up and to take life funny. I mean, it's just like to some of the people I've noticed that have taken the election so seriously, and I've just said it was a funny thing. You've just got to take what comes and see it in a different way. Because usually, no matter what you're experiencing, good is there waiting to emerge. This is what I want you to carry away today, is that your good is always there, and it's always waiting to emerge for you. Thank you.